Well, I guess then they
We are live on the World Crypto Network. Go ahead, Derek.
Hey everyone, this is Derek J from the World Crypto Network. I'm outside of 500 Pearl Street, which is the site of the Ross Ulbricht hearing. We're getting an update from Derek Bros of the Liberty Beat, and he's saying that the prosecution or the defense team lawyer of Ross Ulbricht is saying that the jury nullification pamphleting effort is hurting the case because the judge has threatened that she will make the jury completely anonymous and keep them sequestered. I'm not sure if there's a precedent for that, but it's certainly an interesting reaction to the grassroots campaign that is organized here.
they didn't say that specifically. Like say most people out
Can you be on the record? Do you mind if I record you?
That's fine. The judge didn't say the people out there passing out information about said talking to potential jurors. They didn't say they were directly connected to it, but just in general, she said those people are still out there, and if they're out there tomorrow morning passing out stuff, then we're going to have to make these changes. We're going to have to make the jury anonymous, bring them in through a hidden location, etc., etc.
I guess I'd like to know what the downside of that is. I don't really know what that means.
We probably have to confer with Lynn and the lawyer, with Ross's mom, and see what they say at the play. Because I mean, I think that there could be a
well, I don't know them.
So some people are discussing right now the effects of the jury nullification effort outside of the courthouse. The judge, Catherine Forrest, has threatened to keep the jury completely anonymous and sequester them if the jury nullification effort continues tomorrow.
About how many jury nullification activists were there, and how many flyers did they hand out?
That's a great question. Let me see. Excuse me, this is the World Crypto Network. We're live. Do you have any estimate as to how many flyers you handed out today?
Hundreds, I guess. I don't really have an exact number. I know.
Personally or as a team?
Personally, probably hundreds.
Personally, hundreds. So it sounds like quite a lot. And about how many red hats are there?
I think there were 6.
And the red hats I'm referring to, of course, are the beanies that the jury info people are wearing. They are strictly handing out jury info, and they are not here for Ross. They are here to hand out jury info, not for a particular case. This is a ongoing effort which began years ago and will continue for years.
Would they say this is their most successful campaign ever? Does it usually work this quickly?
Unclear. That's a great question for some of the folks who are here. Oh, wait a minute. We're getting John Bush of the Liberty Beat is here, and hopefully he'll be able to give some kind of update on what was going on inside there. So would you mind introducing yourself and give us a quick briefing on what's going on, John?
Sure. Hi, my name's John Bush. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Liberty Beat, your daily source for Liberty news and activist updates. And I've been here at the trial since early this morning. Started off slow with the voir dire, the jury selection. Several of the jurors were Department of Homeland Security, family, NYPD. They were asked if it would be biased, and they said no, which is unlikely in my opinion. So they picked 12 jurors, continued on, and took a break, got back up. Unfortunately, we had to go over to the spillover room, and at that point we watched the state and the defense's opening statements, and the state painstakingly presented a case that Ross Ulbricht is in fact Dread Pirate Roberts, the administrator of Silk Road website, online black marketplace. He went over a series of evidence that allegedly would link Ross Ulbricht to the website. Among them, they meticulously talked about when he was arrested in a public library in San Francisco with a computer that was open, logged into Silk Road in an administrative section called Mastermind. And they spoke of how the person that he was talking with on a chat at the time of his arrest, who he believed to be one of his employees, was in fact an undercover agent, and the undercover FBI agent was actually in communication with the plainclothes undercover FBI agents that were following Ross around, and he confirmed with the plainclothes undercovers that he was talking to him at that time. They moved in and arrested him, before he can close the computer. Apparently it's encrypted when it closes. I don't know where I got that tidbit from. Maybe it's not true. Maybe I got it online. Don't believe anything you read online unless it's from libertybeat.com, of course. And so they got to the website. That chat was open, all the administrative stuff. That's when they arrested him. Silk Road was closed down the next day. They, on several occasions, tried to make it appear as though Ross, in his role as DPR, profited immensely, and they went over each of the activities that were taking place. For example, allegedly Ross, as DPR, assisted people in getting fraudulent documents, fraudulent passports, assisted them in the selling of narcotics, and repeatedly he continued the meme that Ross was profiting from this and that none of this would be able to happen without Ross. And of course he's doing that in order to help prove these conspiracy charges that Ross, that this wouldn't have happened without Ross. Ross was an integral part. Whether he was actually the one that was selling the drugs or not, he's still going to be brought up on the conspiracy charges. But they also went on to say that in Ross's journal, which was found on his computer, he actually started the Silk Road. The first thing he did was grow mushrooms in a private cabin outside of Austin, Texas, and that was the first product offered on Silk Road. So they had all this evidence. They even said Ross had an old friend who was a computer programmer that he was reaching out to in order to get advice on how to move forward with the top secret project. His friend said, "I'm not going to help you anymore unless you tell me what it is." He came clean as to what it is. Allegedly, this is what the prosecution is saying. And the friend is going to be one of the witnesses in the case. He also spoke of a former employee, I believe, that's going to be a witness. No, I'm sorry, a former dealer on Silk Road that's also going to be a witness in exchange for lesser charges, I imagine. So he went up there and painted this picture. He repeated again the same ideas that Ross is profiting from this. That he's some sort of big drug lord. He said this is the type of activities that drug lords do repeatedly. Again, they're trying to get him on this continuing of a criminal enterprise charge, which they call a kingpin charge, which is normally reserved for drug lords and mafiosos. Then the defense came up, and I was curious how the defense was going to respond to all of these allegations. And so it appears that the angle the defense will be using is that the true Dread Pirate Roberts became aware that he was going to be, or he or they were going to be arrested, and that the government was watching them, and essentially they set up Ross as the fall guy. The defense did in fact admit that Ross is the one who originally came up with the idea for Silk Road, and they went on to say that he started it, but after a couple months he realized that it was too stressful, they said, so he walked away from it. So as I said, I was unsure how the defense was going to proceed, if they were going to try to avoid Ross even being associated with Dread Pirate Roberts and say he has nothing to do with it, but they came forward saying that Ross came up with the idea and then backed away from it. And again, the narrative that the defense will be portraying over the next several weeks is that Ross is the fall guy, and the true Dread Pirate Roberts remains to be unseen. The defense also spent a lot of time speaking of how the $18 million that Ross was caught with on his computer is but a small fraction of the money, the profit that would have come to Roberts, and he continuously asks, where in fact is this money? It's still out there with Dread Pirate Roberts. Dread Pirate Roberts is still on the loose. And then after the opening statements, there was a break. Heard from a special agent with the Department of Homeland Security Investigative Division who, while stationed at Chicago O'Hare, continuously saw packages that were coming through from Amsterdam, and they first found a few that looked like commercial packages. I should add that
that was a big thing, actually, was the commercial addresses and the idea, and I think that goes to talking about the professionalism of it and everything, and that this is once again a kingpin operation. I mean, they kept saying that he's a drug lord, the kingpin, and so yeah, the fact that they were used on they used labels that weren't handwritten was a real big deal, and that was how they were able to identify it, and that the first ones it was Molly or something, or ecstasy, MDMA, that they came across, the 3 pills. Yeah.
Ecstasy pills. And the defense also in their opening statement continuously repeated the idea that if Ross Ulbricht was in fact this drug kingpin, why would he have been so silly as to have all this information on his computer? Why would there be a note that he threw in a trash can in his apartment. And so this special agent continuously saw these packages coming from Amsterdam, and then more of them started to come through and trickle in, and he started looking into it, and he learned of the Silk Road. He logged into the Silk Road, and he was able to match one of the users with the packages and the same drugs, same pictures of the drugs. And he eventually set up like 5 or 6 different fake accounts on the Silk Road. He even administered several accounts from other users, and he even, after arresting one of the employees, he took over one of Ross's dozen or 10 employees. I'm sorry, one of Dread Pirate Roberts' employees. We still don't know if Dread Pirate Roberts is Ross Ulbricht. He took over the site, and he ended up operating it as an employee until the day that Ross Ulbricht was arrested. And then he continued to go on. He even showed a picture evidence that had just stacks and stacks of boxes in a storage room which contained these envelopes from these drugs. Among them were heroin, cocaine, MDMA, ecstasy. Pictures, yes. There's just stacks and stacks of boxes that are in a vault at Chicago O'Hare. So it sounds like this is the prosecution's first witness who has an intimate knowledge. Oh, they also went through a demonstration of Tor. He had a screenshot recording on his computer of how the Onion router works, which is essentially an alternative web browser that masks users' IP addresses and allows them to remain anonymous on the internet. And he talked about how it's beneficial for law enforcement to know who's using the computers, and he showed how you can track an IP address on the normal web, and he went on Tor and showed that the IP address is scrambled and it was actually in Germany. So I think the prosecution is slowly but surely educating the jury about what this technology is all about, and then they're demonstrating why Dread Pirate Roberts would want to use this technology in order to hide his identity, to further the fact that he knew that he was doing something wrong, I imagine. And that's where we are today. The judge was irritated that there's jury nullification pamphlets being passed around outside, and the defense attorney was also irritated. He wanted to put it on the record that he doesn't condone that, and he actually thinks that it's hurting Ross's defense. They talked about whether or not they're going to have an anonymous jury, which I guess means that they scurry the jury in a hurry, and they rush them out through a back door or something so they can't gain access. And they said, we're going to judge based on what happens tomorrow morning if they're approached by people with pamphlets. They didn't say jury nullification pamphlets. Then they might have to switch to an anonymous jury. So that's having an impact one way or the other. And it's being discussed in the courtroom on several occasions today.
Will you take questions?
Sure.
Do we have any questions from the World Crypto Network? I might have to turn the volume.
Is that Davi? Hey, Davi.
All right, we can hear you.
Hey guys. Do we have a
Questions?
Tom? It looks like we don't have a Tom.
I'm here. Go ahead, Davi. Just taking all that in right now.
It's a mouthful.
Do you guys think that there's any merit to the idea if you're annoying the judge? Like, I don't really, like, the defense attorney is going to do his job no matter what, but if you're annoying the judge, that might actually have an effect. Do you think there's a risk of that?
It's possible. I don't know the woman. I don't know how fair or impartial she is, but she seemed very matter-of-fact about it, and my inclination would say that it probably won't make her act negatively to the defense, but I really have no way of gauging whether or not it's going to affect Ross. But again, the defense attorney certainly thinks that it's not helping. Although I don't see how it could hurt unless the jury feels pestered. They probably don't fully understand it, but yeah.
Well, I mean, like, once the trial is underway and the jury is selected and seated and the case is going on, it doesn't really seem like it would have any effect at that point. Like, this is all preliminary stuff, right?
I mean, it's not. What do you mean preliminary? The trial is certainly underway, and the jury has been impaneled. So, the jury nullification activists originally tried to reach as many of the jurors as they could. Actually, I take that back. The jury nullification activists are just reaching out to the general public here. If they happen to be a juror, then that's that. But now there's 12 jurors, and unless they become anonymous jurors, they are going to be interacting with people that are out here passing out publications.
So that would mean dismissing the current jury and finding a whole new jury?
No, I don't think that's what they're going to do. They just said we don't want it to be an anonymous jury, but if this continues, we may have to be. And she explained that she inferred that from what I got, an anonymous jury is one that the public doesn't know who they are, and she said that they would have to go through like secret exits or something like that to avoid the people.
So this is just to keep them from seeing jury nullification activism on their way in and out of the court.
So as to avoid potential tampering with the jury is what they're reasoning.
Okay. That's funny. Like, if I were the judge, I would be more upset about activists raising specifically pro-Ross signs than I would about generic jury nullification signs. Like, to me, that's the most relevant to the case. So why isn't that what bothers them?
I think they understand that what jury nullification truly means, especially if they've, a lot of judges are prosecutors before they become judges, and perhaps they've dealt with it in the past and understand that even if the facts indicate that someone's guilty, that the jury could find them not guilty, and it probably threatens their game as usual. Derek's asking how Ross looked, which is funny at first. There's somebody on the prosecution, a younger guy, I guess he's a paralegal, and he's tall and thin, and I actually thought that he was Ross, and I was like, wow, Ross doesn't look very good. This isn't what he looks like in his pictures. He's pale, his hair is darker for some reason, and he looks a lot thinner while in prison. But then Ross came out shortly thereafter, and he actually seemed like he was in good spirits. He was very excited to see his mom. As soon as he walked out, he started scanning through the audience, and I guess he saw his mother and father there and shot them a big smile. But he looks healthy, and he's a good-looking guy, and I appreciate him, and I'm staying in strong solidarity, whether he's DPR or not. I think he's a good guy, and we should have his back. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I did an audio report where I interviewed a bunch of activists, among them Julia and Derek here, Derek Bros, and Roger Ver also, and that's up on sovereignbtc.com, or you can find it at letstalkbitcoin.com. And then tonight I'll be typing up my notes into a report about the first day's proceedings at thelibertybeat.com.
Thanks for everything you're doing, John.
Thanks, guys.
Free Ross! Hey, thanks everyone. So this is the scene here. Activists are leaving. There are some people still holding signs, as you can see. But this is the end of day one. I intend to come back tomorrow, and it'll be very interesting to see what the judge says about the activists who remain here. Are there any questions before I head out?
Are you surprised that they're taking this Ross is not DPR stance?
No comment, really. I'll let the defense do their job. My job is to remind the public that Ross is not even accused of having created any victims. And if there's no victim, there's no crime.
All right, Dobby, do you have any questions for Derek? Blake, are you joining us? Do you have any questions for Derek?
Well, I was going to agree that denial of any kind is, what you have to do, because, admission of anything is going to be, kind of tacit acceptance that a crime occurred when no crime did transpire. So you don't ever want to agree and, say that you understand. So I can see it from that angle. It's also interesting to me to see that they're saying, that exposing the truth that jury nullification is an option is tampering with the jury pool, which is just absurd. I mean, it's absurd, and it's crazy talk.
Guys, thanks for covering this.
What's up, Jules? How's it holding together out there?
It's cold. We have some decisions to make tonight, so I guess we'll keep you posted on that. And I'm happy with the defense's approach. That's the only way I thought they could go. So they did a very eloquent presentation of their approach and how they're going to proceed with defending Ross. That was good. And Ross looked, almost happy. He was glancing back and smiling, and I was lucky to sit behind Lynn. He was smiling at the whole family, and I guess he gets to spend time with them, right, in the courtroom, but he gets to see them. So it's very melancholy and kind of bittersweet.
Yeah, definitely make sure to give Lynn a big hug for me, and I'm there in spirit and in solidarity, and most definitely thank you for being there.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for covering it.
Well, guys, I'm going to head out. I want to thank you for covering this event. The World Crypto Network kicks ass. Peace, guys.
Peace,
All
Derek.
right. Thanks, Derek. All right, and that was Derek J. live from New York City at the trial of Ross Ulbricht. Now we could definitely start saying the alleged Dread Pirate Roberts. As you guys heard, they're taking kind of a different defense tactic. I suppose perhaps they're right, it's the only defense tactic. But we have a new thing now. Ross Ulbricht is not the Dread Pirate Roberts. The real Dread Pirate Roberts is still out there. Davi, what do you think about that?
I mean, isn't that the nature of Dread Pirate Roberts? I mean, that's what the name infers, isn't it? That there's more than one and there are successors to the Dread Pirate Roberts. I don't think that it's relevant. I think that when a person is up against this level of aggression, they are free to take whatever defense that they feel is best, right? So I don't regard it as a statement of truth whether or not he is the Dread Pirate Roberts or what involvement he had in the actual ongoings of the Silk Road. I expect things like that to come out after the trial, after Double Jeopardy is in effect, and that's when the truth really outs. In a courtroom, it's not about truth; it's about defense, and so that's my thoughts on the subject.
Blake, do you think he is the real Dread Pirate Roberts? Will this defense be successful?
I think that it, again, doesn't matter if he is or not. It's all about defense, and there's no evidence that doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment relative to proving that he is. So I don't know if those kinds of technicalities, which are very important, don't get me wrong, are going to sway this judge, though. This judge, to me, seems very cold and apathetic relative to, you know, in my opinion, judges on a federal level are much more...
I've met so many warm and fuzzy federal judges with hearts of gold, Blake. You just really... It describes the position for me.
I mean, my good friend is an attorney, and he talks all the time about, you know, local cases versus federal cases. You know, to what extent the law is truly observed in each instance, and you don't want to be in a federal court case because they'll cast their hand and throw the key away, and then you'll get an appeal, and their buddy will be like, "Oh, you appealed my homeboy. You know, here you go. Have a double dose of incarceration here." So. It's not a good situation. It's really not. And
well, let's go ahead and recap what we learned today. We just had a report from Derek J. live from outside the courthouse. Liberty Beat at thelibertybeat.com was inside the courthouse. He was in a separate room. I think he was watching the video monitors. Julia Transky from Brave New World, or Brave the World, sorry, was watching live from the courthouse. And what they said is two things, really. Number one, Ross Ulbricht is not the Dread Pirate Roberts. The defense is running an affirmative defense that he is not the Dread Pirate Roberts. He was involved with the website, according to the defense, but he retired, took a leave, he came back, and now he is a patsy. So that is a new piece of evidence, new piece of information we want to put out there. The second piece of information is that the judge is terrified of jury nullification activists. Now, this may be because people want to end the drug war. I've heard a lot of cases of juries that would not convict for minor offenses because they had heard of jury nullification, and maybe this is what the judge is worried about, saying that she would sequester the jury if there was any more flyers from these jury nullification activists. I imagine it's New York City, it's still a free country. Will there be flyers tomorrow, Davi? Is this the end of the drug war, jury nullification? Just those words right there. Google that. Learn about it.
Well, it's not up to me whether or not there are flyers tomorrow, but if it were up to me, there would be. I hope that people are adults, and so if it comes down to the jury's decision, I hope that the jury is able to differentiate between what's going on inside the courtroom and what's going on outside the courtroom. But I don't know. Maybe I have too high an opinion of the average American. But
there was no concern that the jury would be confused by the activist signs like 30 years in jail for running a website, WTF, and these kind of more affirmative pro-Ross statements. It appears it's only the jury nullification statements that pissed her off.
Here's what that means. That means that the judge on some level knows that this is a crime that the general population or some portion of the population doesn't think is a real crime. And if you allow them to have that opinion infect your courtroom, then you would lose the power of the seat you're in. So
yeah, it's thought crime. It's thought crime area. Thought crime territory is big time bad news for this person in this position. I totally agree.
And remember that it is a thought crime to attempt to define thought crime. So don't think about it.
Well, and to apply that it's jury tampering to inform them of the truth of the system that they're going to be operating within is just absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
Like, try to imagine for a moment. Like, here's the thing. Like dystopia is a frog in the pot, right? It happens gradually. So imagine if 200 years from now, the instructions the jury received was, your job is to go into this room and vote guilty. And that was the way they were instructed by the court. And the jury, the jury activists, the FIJA activists in the world will say, no, jury, you have the right to vote. You have the right to acquit. You really do have the right to acquit. And the judge was like, we can't let the jury know. We wouldn't be able to convict anybody if we actually allowed the jury to acquit. Like, that's what's going on here. The judge is misinforming the jury, and the activists are informing the jury, and the court is upset.
And the enemies are clearly the activists. I mean, if the court's upset, I mean, they have divine rule, sitting up there drinking their ambrosia.
So that's where we stand. The court system has been hijacked by the court operators.
By assholes.
I was just trying to pull up this jury nullification document. I think they had quotes from lots of the founding fathers and talking about how important it was as a right. And even just generically, as it says here, the Wikipedia type definition for jury nullification is that jury nullification is the term given to the process where the jury of a criminal case acquits the defendant regardless as if he has broken the law in question. So what we're saying here is, if you don't think that there should be a drug war, and obviously there's lots of states that have legalized medicinal marijuana, there are states that have legalized recreational marijuana. And in a lot of cases, this Silk Road that we keep talking about that's so dangerous was large amounts of cannabis being traded for large amounts of money, aka Bitcoin. So if you don't have a problem with that, and if you're in a state where there's medicinal marijuana or something else like that, you might understand that it's being used for cancer patients, and even the Silk Road itself could have been used by and for cancer patients who, in this case, even if their state didn't allow them access to medicine, they're now, through the Silk Road, able to buy their medicine without a threat of violence, without having to go to a bad...
And jury nullification is basically like the jury comes out and says, we all agree that you don't even have the right to decide on this. You don't have the right to do this. If you're going to use the people and their consent is like, this is the will of the people, this isn't just, the unilateral decree of a monolithic government, but this is the will of the people. If you're going to use us as a jury to convict this person of a crime that's not hurting anybody, like you don't have the right to do this. Nullification is say you can't do this. So it's not as complicated as people might think that it is. It's just really, again, to be simple, they don't have the right to do it, and you tell them they don't have the right to do it, and they're terrified of people finding out that we have the right to do that in the name of crimes to which there's not a victim to protest.
It is kind of the whole point of a jury of your peers. Like, if it wasn't a matter of judging the person in the context of their actual lives without regard to the law, you wouldn't need peers. You would have legal experts sitting on a panel deciding whether or not they had violated the law. Because if it was just a matter of judging the law, then it makes more sense to have a person familiar with the law. But no, we have people sitting on a jury who are common men, who are civilians and things. And the reason for that is because they should be a person familiar with the circumstances of the defendant, which is why it's especially absurd to have law enforcement on the jury. Like, that's like the farthest thing from a peer that could possibly exist.
It does seem it would be practically impossible to try a lawyer because you can never get lawyers on a jury. They always take the lawyers off the panel. We're joined by Tatiana Moroz, live from Australia. Tatiana, how's it going? Do you have some thoughts on the Silk Road trial, which just started up today? You're muted right now. You have to unmute yourself.
I don't know why I was muted. I didn't think that I pressed that button. But hi guys, how's it going? I mean, obviously, I think it's important that people are raising attention for this case. I'm just waking up over here, so I don't know what the latest news is. You guys are pretty ahead of me. Can you give me a briefing? I saw that a lot of my friends were protesting out there, which is good, and that the jury is being selected of mostly government employees.
I didn't hear that detail, but basically we've heard that the Ross Ulbricht defense is basically going to be that he is not the Dread Pirate Roberts. There is another Dread Pirate Roberts. Ross may have been involved with the website, but he is now saying that he is not the one, and we'll see how that goes. And the other major issue of the day is that jury nullification activists who have been standing outside the trial, not directly related to this case, just general jury nullification activists, have been incredibly successful, and the judge is threatening to sequester the jury if the activists are there tomorrow. The judge is very upset about the possibility of jury nullification, i.e., where the jury could say, hey, we don't agree with this drug war, we don't think that trading medicinal cannabis is a crime, and we don't think Ross has done anything wrong, and we're going to let him go regardless of what the law says, which is well within the rights of the jury. So that's the basic news of what's going on that's new. What do you think about
I'm very
that?
happy that they're fearful of the activists. That's fantastic.
But it very much shows the way to end the drug war. Everyone's always asking, how do we end the drug war? Well, you stand out in front of every courthouse in America and you say, hey, there's this thing called jury nullification. And if you don't like the law, if you think, hey, maybe that's not a violent crime, there's not a victim there, I don't understand who's hurt in this situation, you as a juror can say no. And I think it'll make trials fun again. Everyone want to be on juries.
Can you imagine if it was part of the process? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think it's great. We were doing this when we were down in Gold Sculpture. We were talking about this, and this was its revelation. But I don't know how far it's going. I think this is a really good case to bring up why jury nullification. Like, I think that they're complementary in that regard. Do you know what I'm saying? For both issues.
It is a very good point that Ross seems to be on trial while all the laws around him are changing. When he was running the website a few years ago, there wasn't as much medicinal marijuana as there is now, and there's just tons more everywhere every day. Davi, what were you going to say about the updates on the trial?
Well, I was going to say, like, can you imagine how interesting it would be if the sort of the progress of the justice system going forward was that the prosecutor not only had to prove the elements of the crime, but had to prove to the jury that the crime was even worth being a crime? Like, imagine if that was sort of part of the case you had to build was, yes, this is, like, regardless of the law, this is a good law.
Burden of law. Yes, that would be an interesting new addition to the trial. I'm sure the lawyers would love it. So let's see what else is going on. Tatiana, do you think the jury nullification activists should keep handing out pamphlets? Should they stop immediately?
I think that's a loaded question. I think it's great that there are people out there. I think that you know, there's a lot of different ways that people can be activists, and like with Bitcoin, I think it's easier to not have to stand in the street and stand on the picket sign. You know, I have to admit that that's definitely like a perk. But I think in this case, I'm really grateful that there are people willing to travel all the way to New York and to show their support and to stand out there and to give out flyers. And I think that they're really, I don't know, they're really setting a very good example for what needs to happen in certain cases. And this is one of those cases where you need to have boots on the ground. And the fact that the judge is not letting people protest there or whatever, they're trying to sequester the jury, I mean, that's great. That means that we're doing something right. So keep it up, everybody. That's awesome. I think that even if people can stop by for a few hours and bring hot coffees or something, or hot chocolates or good cheer, I think that that'll be really helpful. And I think that the audience at home is also engaged because they can be live tweeting and sharing everything as it goes along. I think that the independent media has taken a really good initiative in terms of actually organizing, all right, we're all going to get together. This is where you're going to hear all the latest stories, and also supporting each other and sharing each other's content. I think that that's really helpful. And I think that it's a really good learning experience. I have a song that I wrote about this case myself, so I've been kind of thinking about how to release it. So I feel a little bit like I'm not doing anything, but I am doing something. And I look forward to being able to share that with everybody. But it's really, I think it's something that a lot of us are going through on a personal level. I think that we all feel very strongly connected to this case. And I don't know, it's really like something that I think will be remembered for many years to come as something that we all went through, and hopefully we'll all come out of better for.
Now, we also had news this morning of a large Bitcoin crash. Is there anything you can do about the price, Tatiana? We're down to $223 here.
No.
Yep, I'm afraid so. We hit a bottom of 220. How do you feel?
Today. Oh my God, that's horrible news.
Oh, we're breaking to you live. This is our new show. We show people the price live, and we get their reaction. Davi, have you heard about the price?
Yeah, I've been following the price pretty closely for the last couple weeks.
Oh,
just
you're not as
so
much fun as Tatiana. We'll show you again.
Show me again. Okay.
All right, go ahead, Davi.
Terrible news. I did not appreciate that broadcast.
That's our new prank show. It's show you the price, and the price drops. And of course, we never mention the price without mentioning the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. I'm joking, but I'm also serious. If you're feeling sad and you lost some money, you should give them a call. And you can hold on to your Bitcoin and just see how this goes. We've got lots of time still, right? So it's going to be good. Yeah, that's what's been going on.
I'm in it for the long haul, right? So it's like you tighten your belt while it's low, but I don't anticipate it disappearing, so it's okay.
Well, and the chart readers say that we could go as low as 150, 130. So everyone should probably hang in there. It's going to be another long run, and we'll see that if there's another bump up or something. Might be a nice exit. I don't know. We'll see. Last 400's looking pretty good now, huh?
Hey, 130, 150, that sounds like a good buy-in. If that's what do chart watchers just predict prices now? So, are they saying that's when to buy? Is that what they mean?
We had a very cool chart watching guy, BTC Vix, and he sounded very reasonable. And basically what he said is that the whales right now are shorting Bitcoin. So the whales are making tons of money pushing the price down, and that's going to continue until they see this point out there. And eventually they're going to see this point where they say, hey, oh, that's the up point. And then they're going to stop shorting Bitcoin, and they're going to start buying Bitcoin again. They're going to start buying Bitcoin on leverage so they can buy 10 times as much Bitcoin. And da-da-da-da-da. And because of this leveraging, it will cause it all to go back up. So that's what everyone's holding on for, that and the block halvening in 2016. Everyone says the halvening is going to be great. So that's what we got.
Great.
That's interesting. What happened when it halved the last time? Did everybody panic? I don't remember.
It went up a little bit. It went from 50 to 25, and everyone kind of went, yay! And now it's going to go from 25 to 12.5, but it's being mined at such a much larger level. The first halvening was really just around, I don't know the exact time. I recall it around the time I was getting in, so around the Cypress and the 250 spike. Don't you think it was around then? It was just kind of happening a little after that, and then this new 25 to 12.5, that's fully within the ASIC era. So there are huge mining farms, and there are cubicle, shipping containers full of miners. There's all this happening, whereas at that time it was more still hobbyists. So it's a much bigger deal for these shipping miners. So anything else going on? Anything you guys would like to plug before we start to end this broadcast?
I'm going to start hanging out with you guys more on this little podcast.
I know, we're live on the internet. It's exciting stuff. We just had Derek from New York City. Earlier in today, we had a big, massive hangout. If you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. It's on World Crypto Network. We've got Chris Ellis, Shembu Spain, Theo Goodman, a whole other cast of characters, and they were all talking about what we're talking about. They were talking about the downtrend. They were talking about the price. They're talking about the Silk Road, a couple other topics. But Davi, anything to send us out here? We're about to close it up. Blake Anderson's back with us, but we're still about to close it up.
Big news for me is I'm going to Walker Stalker Con at the end of the month, which is a zombie convention. I go to promote my book Survivor Max. But it's also, this convention has sort of become a target for a number of Bitcoin vendors. I'm not the only one there anymore that uses Bitcoin. So I wouldn't be surprised if, for some odd confluence of interests, zombie conventions become very Bitcoin friendly in the near future.
Zombie conventions and libertarians, hand in hand with the Bitcoin. Blake, do you have any kind words to close it up as we await the 2016 halvening? The only event that could save our precious Bitcoin?
No, man. If there's a pervasive monetary collapse of various nations, it could come on a lot faster. But I don't know if that's worth the accelerated gas.
I'll just keep rooting for the pervasive monetary collapse of several nations. Poor Argentina.
Well, oil right now, energy is in a big crude and oil is fighting with natural gas and keeping the price down until they shuck some more business out of them, and then they're going to raise prices later on. So it's go Bitcoin long term because stuff's going to get exciting this year. But it's neither here nor there in terms of this trial. So.
All right, so everyone should hang on. And again, that suicide hotline number was 1-800-273-8255 if you're feeling down. And we'll be back with you later with more Silk Road updates tomorrow, the next day, on the World Crypto Network. Please subscribe below. Bye-bye.